So to the mess at Carlton, Tom Morris with the latest shortly. But Brownie, you saw him on the weekend. Is it going to eventually cost David Teague's job, that performance?
Oh, yeah, those performances like that on the weekend, absolutely. So, you know, and it still might, even if he won the last 4 games. So he's now getting into perilous territory. I was there to commentate the game. It was horrible. The third quarter especially, which will show some vision after we speak to Tom Morris. But walking away from that game, I thought, geez, if I was a Carlton supporter, I'd be absolutely shattered and disappointed with my senior players.
Doomsday scenario certainly for David Teague. Tom Morris has been with us and he's been monitoring this. What's the latest on the Carlton situation, Tom, and specifically on the review?
Yeah, Jared, as we go to air tonight, this Carlton situation is reaching a climax. I understand the review is about 80% complete, and by the end of the week, the board will be presented with a full review, and from there, they'll be able to make a decision on where the club goes from here. Now, incoming President Luke Sayers and Kane Little, they've been in constant conversations across the weekend. I understand that Kane Little has at least preliminary understanding of what this review is going to entail. Jeff Walsh was at the club this morning, but he has been at the club for at least a couple of hours every day for the past 5 weeks, so that's not too unusual in itself. David Teague, Brad Lloyd, the assistants, the fitness boss, Andrew Russell, all under significant pressure now. Andrew Russell, especially given how many injuries there have been at Carlton this year. They've got about 15 on the injury list at the moment, and people inside the club tell me that is significant. People inside the club also tell me that there's like a cloud hanging over Icon Park at the moment. There's going to be wholesale changes of some sort, whether that does include David Teague, whether it's Brad Lloyd, whether it's others, just the assistant coaches. We'll have to wait and see. But it does, Jared, come at the worst possible time given the loss on the weekend and the fact their game has been moved to Friday night this week, so they're on full show for everyone to see.
I can't believe, though, Tom, the weekend's game would be the watershed moment for them. Surely this is going to be a much more in-depth discussion than just one really bad performance.
Yeah, absolutely. But the way these reviews work, Jared, is that they put forward a number of recommendations, and those recommendations are either taken or not. And with performances like this, those recommendations are actually probably worse for David Teague or other people inside the club than they otherwise would be. So I've got no doubt that performances like this, while not the death knell, 2, 3, 4 in a row, will be bad news.
Tom, you mentioned the St Kilda play Carlton on Friday night, so they are on display. What else have you got for us from round 20?
Yeah, so that game's been moved forward from Saturday, and the reason for that is because Essendon and Sydney were originally planned to play on Friday night. Both teams have had 5-day breaks, so under the AFLPA guidelines, they can't play on Friday night, so that's been moved back to Saturday. Western Bulldogs and Adelaide are playing in Ballarat this weekend. That's the early game on Saturday. In total, there's 5 games this Saturday, including 1 in Tasmania, so the AFL has gained that exemption from the Tasmanian government to fly North Melbourne and Geelong to Blunston Arena, and that game on Sunday is Hawthorn and Brisbane, who are flying to Tasmania as well. But there's 2 games that are very much still up in the air. That's why there's a TBC next to those matches. One is Gold Coast versus Melbourne. The reason is because the Demons can't get to Queensland without quarantining at the moment. The other is the Giants and Port for the same reason. So the AFL working overtime, allowing this sterile corridor between Victoria and Queensland. But at the moment, there's no clear answers on exactly how those 2 games, or no plan B that I know of, on how those 2 games are going to get underway this weekend.
Thanks for that, Tom. No doubt we'll be following you with all the news right throughout the week. Who would have thought sterile corridor was a major conversation piece in AFL footy? Brownie, as you said, you were there. What went so wrong? Who should be feeling the heat for the Blues?
Well, we'll go to quarter 3, and quarter 3 was damning, especially if you're a senior player for Carlton, and ultimately it could cost David Teague his job because it certainly started the momentum. Quarter 3, 12 inside 50s they conceded to North Melbourne. North Melbourne scored 7 goals too. So obviously North had a lot of the football, and in that third quarter, only 9 tackles laid. Now have a look at the senior players here. So it started off with Cripps. There's quite a bit of vision here. Plowman. If his life depended on it, he'd put more effort. What about the shepherd here from Sard? Just no care for his teammate there. Now, we know Davies Uniacke might have got that. Look at that. Where's the team? So 3 Carlton players leading to the same direction. Just thinking about I, not team. Obviously, Cripps has got to cover up Hall here. He's got to stay with him. I'm not sure what Cripps is doing there, but Hall ends up being the link man, which leads to a goal. So that's just basic defensive responsibilities. Have a look at this for a tackle from Sard. Now, this is not touch football. This is AFL football at its best. Now, that was below standard. Now, I'm sure where that is in the game plan from Nick Newman, another senior player. Petrevski-Seton has been around enough times now. He's a sweeper at a stoppage. Now, his responsibility is to cover up the defensive side. He allows Taylor just to walk out of there and take an easy, uncontested mark. Have a look at this one.
This is all in the third quarter,
and Wiedering, all in the third quarter. Wiedering needs to push Plowman up to pick up the North Melbourne player, Simpkin, who just drops in there, picks up an easy mark, kicks it over to his teammate, who walks into goal. So we talk about system a lot. Okay, now that's not about system, that's standards, and it's all senior players. So I wonder behind the scenes, is David Teague holding the senior players to account? Is he hitting up those senior players? Because consistently their standards are not up to scratch.
Yep. There's no effort there.
There's no effort. That's poor. So don't worry about system. Let's talk about standards, okay? And that's where I'm starting to wonder.
I'm glad you've done that, because automatically all the heat comes to the coach. Yeah. When you break it down and when you go through the effort, the one non-negotiable as a player every time you run out there, and it's hard to give great effort every week. Yeah. That's why the best players are the best players, because they're able to tick that off every week. Yeah. But that's now what this review panel have to decide. They have to go through and they have to identify and understand the culture that David Teague is trying to bring, along with the senior people at the football club. Are the personnel there capable of executing a game plan and the standards? And then the question that you just brought up is accountability. Is there enough accountability coming back to those that don't live the standards and the values and behaviours that you want?
But it's David Teague's job to get that effort out of them. It's David Teague's job to put in place a system of defence and a system of defence that's reliable, and it doesn't appear to have been executed.
Yeah, well, I just want to take you back. So you spend the whole pre-season as a coach working out how you want to play, right? And then you coach that, and then you train it and you drill it. So round 7 is completed. They're 4 wins and 3 losses, or 3 wins and 4 losses. They just beat Essendon. They're ready to play the Western Bulldogs. And this quote, I mean, this is Icon Park this morning, but there's a quote in the lead up to the interview that still sticks in my mind. And this is when they're ready to play the Western Bulldogs. If we concede a big score, we just have to make sure we kick a bigger score. It's score versus scores against. Now, that to me, every time I look at what Brownie showed us, how we see these runner goals against that are a pattern of behaviour, where I see 10 goals from the back half, my mind goes back to that. And if that's your philosophy that you've trained in the pre-season, and at round 7 you're trotting out for the whole of the public to consume, there's not a defensive...
So do you think that's the seed for the poor effort, though?
Well, no, there's no excuse for the poor effort. But Jared's point's well, you can't sack a lot of the players.
I'll play devil's advocate with you. So Nathan Buckley, who had the opposite. Yeah. So Teague, you know, without putting words in his mouth, it's, OK, well, if they're going to kick 15, we'll kick 17 goals. Buckley, the narrative was that, well, if the opposition's going to kick 8, and we'll kick 9. So and he was lambasted at times for that. So how can you then turn around at the same time and say, well, they want to play an attacking style and win big?
Because when you're struggling and trying to establish your core and your credibility, it's generally done from a defensive point of view. Let's get the defensive tenets in place. That's the throwback to an era gone by where we didn't have 6 assistant coaches who spend all day dismantling. That's the Malcolm Blight philosophy, which we loved. That was because it was just,
it's great to watch.
I'll kick one more. It was great to watch. You know what happens? Other teams go to work on that. And they go, we know what they want to do. We'll take the scoring away from them because of our defensive philosophy, and then they've got no comeback.
I don't think that's David Teague's philosophy, by the way.
Well, no, but it's an insight into a mindset. And then you see 10 goals scored from the back half. That means you're not stopping him, Nick. And then I go, oh, he wants to kick more than have more kicked against him.
Every system requires effort. I think we'd all agree on that, whether it's attacking system or defensive system. And on the weekend there was no effort, which is going to mean any system they've got in place, which was probably apparent the last few weeks, is just going to break down. It was embarrassing, some of the stuff that they put up.
Well, it was. Again, in the third quarter, I got some behind-the-goals vision, Jared, and we talk about system, but it does. A good system needs to be executed with good effort. And so let's have a look at this. So they outnumber... Carlton have 10 players in their defensive 50 against 5 North Melbourne players. So this is the first kick in, goes to a contest, spills around, bobbles around in North Melbourne's forward line. So probably about 5 to 10 seconds elapses here for the Carlton players to win the ball back. Now they've got an extra. So now it's 11 versus 5 as the North Melbourne player kicks it over his shoulder. Still, not one Carlton player has been able to get his hands on the football when they had a double numerical advantage. So,
And I'll tell you what, it's a bloody embarrassment because it was Ed Curnow, who's one of the hardest working blokes that club has had, who's not the most talented player, but he has busted his ass for that footy club for a long time, and they dished that up in his 200th game.
And you say whether this will be the one that breaks the camel's back, I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But when you've got a suspicion that there's an issue and you've had it, all that does is confirm. It confirms your doubts. I mean, it has come at the exact wrong time. And that's just stating the obvious, but when we've talked all year about their inability to defend or have some sort of defensive structure in place that stops run-ons and stops goals from the back half, and then you see that sort of says, well, has it been addressed? And if it has been addressed and you haven't been able to get it implemented, then it's a bit damning.
But to Brownie's point, it's impossible to address whether it's been spoken about, because if you don't bring the effort, you're no chance. You can't compete if you don't bring effort.
Enough of the Blues. We'll move on to the Roos on